Hello, welcome to Sacred Book, a respectful, in-depth conversation of both the Tanakh and the New Testament, from a secular, that's my point of view, Mark, and a theistic, which is...
My point of view, Steve.
We'll get better as we go along.
I'm sure we will.
Before we start on the main project, we thought it would be useful just to lay out who we are and what we hope to get from this project. Because I get the feeling, Steve, the fact that both of us can talk the hind leg off a donkey, this might be a long project.
It could drag on. The wheels could turn for a little while, I feel.
So introduce yourself, sir, and why the Christian perspective, and what do you hope to get out of it?
I guess, first of all, let's answer that last one first. What do I hope to get out of it? Really, it's just an opportunity to just share some thoughts with you and to exchange ideas with you and to just put different points of view out on the table. It's not to force my view over your view or indeed for your view to be forced over my view. It's purely just to have a chat about it. So I guess if anybody takes the time to listen to this, what I'd really like them to picture is two old mates sat in the pub together, having a pint and just chatting together about stuff. And that's probably what I'd like to get from it. Why do I come at it from a theistic point of view than any other? Probably because of personal experience. Certainly when it comes to what we'll broadly term a religious or mystical experience, then I would say that there was a significant moment in my life, probably around about 13 years ago now, that had a dramatic impact on me. And it changed the way that I approached my worldview, I suppose. And that came about as a result of taking a non-secular view of the Bible and determining to investigate it as a detective in order to disprove it. And so setting out to disprove it, I personally became more and more convinced that there was sufficient evidence in there for me to have to really consider and weigh up. Now, what that evidence threshold is for other people, I guess, is going to be very subjective to them as individuals. For me, the evidence factor was sufficient for me to have to make an informed decision. And then making that informed decision, other things sort of opened up for me. So that sort of gives you a background of how I came to it from the deist or theist, probably, rather than deist point of view. And yeah, and so it comes on the back of a history of probably being quite agnostic to belief in many respects, a background of being a detective for many years, and as you will know, being an ex-serviceman in the armed forces for a good number of years as well. So I'm not somebody who takes things lightly, and I certainly have applied as much of my own little grey cells, as Hercule Poirot would say, my little grey cells as I can regarding this. But I recognise that everyone has a different view, so I'm going to be really interested just to catch up with you and chew the fat, mate. I think I've said enough on my intro, and you can cull that and cut that as you see fit. But go for it for yourself.
We're long-standing friends, acquaintances. We knew each other on HMS Charybdis in the 80s. We served in the Royal Navy. And then we split apart for almost 33 years. And in that time, we'd lived life. I'd been into publishing and teaching. In fact, my degree before I went to university as a 33-year-old and studied art, design, theology, and philosophy. And the reason I chose theology, because I've always had a long-standing interest in the Bible. I remember us talking about it in the 80s. And when I came out of teaching, I could very easily have gone into art or chosen history as a subject. My first job in teaching was the head of a religious studies department in a grammar school. Loved it. And I approach this because I'm the secular point of view, although I have to put them to the table, and Steve knows this. I don't like these titles. I don't like the title of atheist and secular, because it's like saying you only ever read Gothic novels or you only ever read Westerns. Just read a book. So I'm interested, of long-standing, but I'm obviously from a non-aligned perspective. However, perhaps a better word, or a couple of words to say what I'm like, is ecumenical. I like the idea of let's meet in the middle and let's see what we can agree on. And I think there'll be an awful lot in the Bible. And omnistic. William Blake, I think it was 1788, he wrote, it's it's known as a poem, but it's not. It's like a poetical essay. It's called All Religions Are One. And I made a note of it. Right at the end, he says, and of course it's not in context, so you might not fully get it, but he says, as all men are alike, though infinitely various, so all religions. And as all similars have one source, the true man is the source, he being the poetic genius. Which is slightly deistic. It's the idea that we all, I think me and you, Steve, and many people who approach the Bible can agree on more than we would disagree. And I believe that there is a force out there that created the universe. There's a lot in the Tanakh and the New Testament I will agree with. I'm talking about the 90% at least. What do I aim to get out of this? Well, enjoyment. As you rightly say, just to talk to each other, to learn, to be challenged. I'm more than willing to say, oh, I hadn't considered that before, and I can see what your point of view is. I've been listening to your sermons that you record and put up on the interwebby thingy, and I've learned a lot from it, especially the angles that you come at. So I'm looking forward to being challenged. And as I say, I suppose I've got a little template I'm going to work for. It won't always happen, and knowing me, I'll probably abandon it 3 or 4 episodes down the line. And it's because I've written 2 books. I'm interested in the language, in the imagery that's contained in the scripture, the universal relevancy, not just for Jews or Christians, but for people like myself, and the metaphysical, the spiritual. What is the messages that are being given? And I think when I studied the Bible 20 years ago, times moved on, experiences moved on, and I think I'm going to approach it now in a completely different mindset than I did before, and that's what I'm really looking forward to.
And I think you'd be absolutely right. I mean, I can remember a long time ago now, so probably in the very early 90s, having not long come out of the forces, I looked at the Bible and I had an approach to it then, which was very black and white. It was either true or it was false. It was either literal or it wasn't. You either took it exactly as the words on the page said in the English or you didn't. And that caused me huge problems and basically caused me to park it all and say, this is nonsense. I can't agree with any of this. I can't believe any of this. As I've got older, not necessarily wiser in every area of my life, but as I've got older, I have been able to open my thinking to other approaches, other ways of doing things. And obviously my life over the years has forced me to be quite unconventional in some of my work, and that obviously means that some of my thinking had to be quite unconventional, and it's given me the opportunity to use those different skills and tools to then reapply to this book. As I say, I decided to reapply it to show why it was all wrong, and found that that was a challenge. So
It's interesting that ding then, it was almost emphasising the point.
it's going to be my phone text message going off. It pops up on the screen, unfortunately, so hopefully there won't be too many of them.
So that's then who we are, and hopefully if you're new to the channel, and you may find this sometime in the future, we won't tend to introduce ourselves each episode. That would be redundant, and we've just thought we'd start off with a reference point as to who we are and what we aim to achieve, and long may it continue.
Nice one. And we'll look forward to getting stuck into the first long.
Which we're going to be talking about next.
Very good.